Molly. What that puppy doing, Bobby? Oh, phone fell. Phone fell. Da. Dang. Dang, Bobby. Dang. Dang. What? Green one.
What if recording high-quality content, editing like a pro, and streaming like a star was as simple as hitting record? With Riverside, it's just that. Riverside makes the
Shut up.
Hello and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart, and today we're taking you to a place very unusual but very well known. And who would have thought it? Greenland.
Yay.
A hotbed of UFOs. That's if you accept the extraordinary evidence gathered by our guest today, podcaster, lawyer, and UFO researcher Martin Kleist. Now, Martin, I'm going to get you to tell me how to pronounce the name of your UFO podcast. Can you give it to me in Danish, please?
The name of the podcast is Uforklarligt, so in English that translates into unexplainable.
Uforklarligt.
Uforklarligt, yeah. Almost.
So the word unexplainable in Danish has the word UFO in it as well.
Exactly, that's why it's a perfect name for the podcast.
Isn't that a wonderful symmetry? And is it a coincidence also that Greenland, a place that's featured in the news so prominently in recent months with the political toing and froing from President Trump about whether or not the Greenlandians should hand over their section of Denmark for national security reasons. As we all know, President Trump has been running a huge campaign to ask Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark, to hand over Greenland. Can you first, before we go any further, Martin, explain this politics to us?
Yeah, I can. I think that, first of all, it has been kind of surreal for us seeing this development happening, because we started off this project around, I think, 2 years ago, where the place that we went to was more or less uninhabited. There lives around 100 people, 120 people, and we didn't know at all at that point that this would be the focal point of a major geopolitical conflict between the US and Denmark and Greenland. So a bit surreal to be a witness to at the moment.
So Greenland is part of Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark, headed, of course, by an Australian, Queen Mary, who had the good sense to marry a Danish boy who had turned out to be a potential king. And as I understand it, it's long been an issue of dispute between America and Denmark. The Americans have tried to get their hands on Greenland in the past, haven't they?
Yes, for many years. I think actually it goes back to around the 18th century that the US wanted to have some kind of possession over Greenland. So, and they have had a huge military presence in Greenland historically. But now the military presence is quite limited to the space base, Pituffik space base up in the high north in Greenland, in Thule.
So what fascinates me is you have made a fascinating documentary about sightings in southern Greenland, and you've travelled to the region with a documentarian called forgive me if I mispronounce this, Lassi Rabek. Is that a good pronunciation? Have I done all right?
That's close enough, yeah. Lasse Rabeck, yeah, that's true.
And you've basically caught imagery, video of a mysterious light phenomenon that's been reported for some time by local residents. Let's have a look first at your trailer, which is a beautiful tribute to the beauty of Greenland.
Altså, af alle de her uidentificerede flyvende ting og sager, der ligesom er, der kan 99% af det forklares. Og den interessante del er jo den sidste del af det, som ikke kan forklares. Er det en af de her, altså, er det en del af den ene procent, der ikke kan forklares?
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Dykker man virkelig ned i UFO-fænomenet, så går det op for en, at det er virkeligt. Og nu har vi så fundet et sted i Grønland, hvor alle ser de her flyvende objekter.
Der kom 3 frem bag fra fjeldet, og så nogle sekunder efter, så kom der 2 frem også, som fløj direkte til værs, altså.
Den skifter jo retning.
Ja, den flyver sådan.
Den skifter retning, jo. Det er gakkelagt, det her. Jamen, det er det. Det er det jo.
Så vi er her. Men så er det jo den her retning, det er set i. Første aften, jeg var med derude, der var de meget kraftige. Ja. Altså som virkelig kraftige. Det lignede jo sådan en projektor fra en helikopter, der kom flyvende næsten. Ja. Altså.
At der er spøgelser i Narsarsuaq.
Der er nogen, der siger, der er spøgelser i Narsarsuaq, ja.
Men nu er vi nede ved havnen, hvor der ikke er ret meget lys. Nu sætter jeg lige noget kameragrej op.
Ja.
Det er der. Det der var ikke satellitter.
Ja, det så
Ja, det så godt.
Nu har jeg jo lavet det her i 12 år. Altså, jeg har ikke set noget, der opfører sig på den måde der før. Altså, det er et eller andet fænomen, der udsender et lys af sig selv.
Hvad tænker du, det er?
UFO'er. Det må det være.
Altså, han ved udmærket godt, hvad det er for et projekt, vi har gang i. Ja. Han ved godt, altså, hans ry og omdømme.
I vores kultur er det meget åbent at snakke om overnaturlige historier, oplevelser og den slags, og det er meget accepteret. Dine øjne ser en verden, jeg ikke ser. Jeg kan aldrig nogensinde vide, hvad det er, du ser.
Jeg ved ikke hvorfor, men jeg føler også, der er sådan et eller andet på spil, eller han er nok også meget om mig selv, ikke? Andet end et eller andet lysfænomen, som ingen ved, hvad er.
So, Martin, Greenland looks like a beautiful place. What was it that you were told in 2023? I think by a local pilot from a town called, is it Narsarsuaq in southern Greenland?
Narsarsuaq, yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult name to pronounce, but yeah, it's Narsarsuaq. I got contacted by a now former Greenlandic pilot, and he told me about his own very remarkable UFO encounter during a landing with a helicopter in Narsarsuaq. He saw a oval-shaped object hanging near an edge of clouds during the landing in Narsarsuaq, which in itself is a very remarkable sighting. But what he also told me was that these objects were actually being seen on a daily basis up there. And not only by local people living there, they were being witnessed by very credible witnesses such as pilots, air traffic controllers, flight mechanics, and so on. And I was like, this almost sounds too good to be true. But again, I can't dismiss the quality of the witness, so to speak. So I reached out to my good friend and colleague Lasse, as you mentioned, and said, I've heard about this story. I think we need to go right now, actually, because they're seeing them up there right now. So I think we left within a week for Greenland to see if we could see something for ourselves. And that was a very interesting trip, I must say, the first trip up there, because we did see stuff for ourselves up there at the first trip.
Let's go back to that pilot for a moment. So he was seeing a light? Just a light, or was it a solid object?
That was my interpretation of it, was that it was a solid object, an oval-shaped object, very luminous, hanging near the edge of some clouds. Quite big, as he told me, and suddenly it just disappeared.
Bubba.
And his colleagues saw it as well.
Did it register on his plane's radar? Did he see it on his radar?
I'm not aware of that, but I don't think that they saw anything on radar, and that's one of the things up there. They have very limited radar capacities up there, and that's also a lot of what the discussions goes around at the moment up there, because we are lacking defense capabilities and capabilities to detect stuff in the sky up there.
Well, President Trump wants to come in and give you all manner of assistance if you just become a citizen of America, Martin. Yeah. How do you think the Greenlandians feel about that, by the way?
Not very good. I'm part Greenlandic myself, actually, so I also have some feelings invested in this, and being a witness to this discussion that has been going around for quite a long time now has been quite surreal, and I think actually it's a symptom of a much larger problem, because the Greenlandic people always feel that the discussions in Copenhagen here in Denmark sort of goes over the Greenlandic people's heads. So when they do any political discussions or decisions, Denmark mostly come up there and say, now we need to learn you about politics. Now we're going to tell you about what you should do, and so on. And I think the Greenlandic people are quite tired of that.
Well, one of the scandals I am aware of, and I learned about this actually recently from a fantastic podcast called The Rest is Classified. And one of the reporters on that podcast, Gordon Carrera, used to work for the BBC, and he told a fascinating story of how the Thule Air Base, which is, I understand, an American air base in Greenland, it had nuclear weapons, and this had been kept secret from the people of Greenland and, of course, most of the citizens of Denmark. And there was a secret agreement between the country of Denmark and the United States to allow the US Air Force to keep nuclear-armed planes on the soil of Greenland. That all came out in 1995. Was that a big political issue at the time, Martin?
Nuclear weapons and nuclear material in Greenland has always been a big discussions for the Danes, and my interpretation of it is that we don't really have any clear idea about what they are actually doing up there, because there's this defense agreement between the US and Denmark from 1951 that basically gives all the rights that the US wants to have facilities, military facilities up there, and do whatever they want. And that's also why the whole discussion right now about Trump wanting to have more military presence up there is sort of, I don't know, pseudo in some way, because they actually do have the right to do whatever they want. They can just call up Denmark or the Prime Minister, and she would say yes anytime. And I think that in terms of nuclear weapons and nuclear material, we have had some projects in Greenland which the Americans initiated. For instance, the Project Iceworm, where they wanted to build like an underground city where they could store missiles and build missiles silos. But they then realized that the ice was moving, so they had to give up on the project. But they actually left like a nuclear reactor up there. And also there's a story about a B-52 bomber crashing up there with, I think it was hydrogen weapons on board, and one of the weapons disappeared beneath the ice. So the discussions about what the Americans has done up there and their activities are they just make a mess every time they do something in Greenland, to be honest.
Well, that was one of the stories that was told on this podcast I was talking about, that there were 4 nuclear weapons on board a B-52 bomber that crashed in 1968 off the end of the Thule Air Base in Greenland, and it crashed in Baffin Bay in icy waters and sank. And they were able to recover, I think, 3 of these thermonuclear weapons, hydrogen bombs, as you say. But I find it incredible that under the waters of Baffin Bay, to this day, there is a hydrogen bomb, there is a nuclear weapon, a thermonuclear weapon that God forbid anybody would ever recover. I presume it's degraded long by now. Do you suspect that the objects that are being seen, these anomalous objects that are being seen by locals in this town, Narsarsuaq, do you believe that there is some kind of connection to the nuclear weapons at the American base?
I don't think so in terms of what's going on in Narsarsuaq. I think it entails something else, because it's a very, very long way from Thule Air Base. It's called Pituffik Space Base now. It's operated by the Space Force, and there's a very long way from the north to the southern tip of Narsarsuaq where these lights are being seen. So I don't think so, no.
So Narsarsuaq's right down the very bottom in the southern fjords of Greenland, and Pituffik, which used to be Thule Air Base, the one I'm talking about, that's right up in the north. Is that right?
Yeah, very much high up in the north, yeah.
And what I find fascinating is Vice President J.D. Vance visited the Pituffik Air Base in the period before the election. I mean, there was a lot of priority given by the Trump team. Okay, let's ask it this way. You don't think there's a UFO nukes connection necessarily, but do you think that the UFOs are a subject of interest, or do you suspect that they're a subject of interest at the Pituffik Space Base? What's the purpose of the Pituffik Space Base? And do you think there are other agendas from the president, Mr. Trump, and they're different from perhaps the rare earth minerals explanation? We're all told that Greenland has an enormous amount of rare earth minerals that are very, very important to national security, and that we need access to those rare earth minerals, and America needs, for some reason, to take over Greenland in order to achieve that. There's not a lot of logic in that, because I would have thought, from the sound of it, your government would allow the Americans to dig up whatever they wanted in Greenland to facilitate the defense agreement. What's your take on all of this? What's Pituffik all about? And is the rare earth minerals issue an issue as well?
I think that the primary focus for the space base up there is to monitor what comes in and out of our atmosphere. It basically serves as an early missile warning system for everything that comes from the east, for instance, Russia. So they are carefully monitoring whatever comes in and out of the atmosphere up there. And that's sort of their key focus. So I find it very hard to imagine that the Space Force wouldn't be aware about what's going on. And you have reported quite a lot about the objects that were seen near the Arctic Circle during the shoot-downs back in 2023, where many of these objects were seen in the Arctic region. And I think that I really think that they do have some kind of knowledge about what's flying around up there. We also heard from, I think it was Daily Mail, who wrote that that Space Force core mission right now is sort of challenged by all of these anomalous objects that's being seen everywhere around the world. And I think that also makes the case for Pituffik Space Base. They are seeing anomalous objects. If they're saying, Space Force, that they're seeing anomalous objects, it might be also seen from there. I think that's highly likely.
Capacitor cores check is okay. Fusion cores are primed for ascent.
Copy that. The team is ready to release the hold in T-minus 2 minutes.
Verification.
Now, where you really caught my attention, Martin, was when you sent me what you and Lassie had filmed with your video camera. It's obviously, you caught a lot of imagery. You caught imagery that we'll go into in detail, but there is one dramatic video of an object rising from behind the mountain. Can you paint the scene for me of what we're about to see?
Yes, we are in Narsarsuaq, and these objects are primarily being seen when we have like clear skies and during the evening time. And actually, as I said, it's many credible witnesses who see this, and we were brought there by one guy who's closely affiliated with the airport up there, so a highly credible witness. And we went there almost every evening, actually, seeing different kind of lights come up from behind the mountain. And the video that we are about to see I think sometimes videos is not good to represent what you actually see with your naked eye, because this was very extreme to witness. It was a light that came up from behind the mountain, and we could see it even before it came up from behind the mountain because the light was so bright. And we have an infrared camera, so we can see everything on the sky, even the smallest satellites. We can see them fly around, but these objects, they sort of come up and then they become very big and bright, and then they just disappear. We cannot figure out whether they're going away with high speeds or if they're just simply vanishing from sight. But we have seen during our first trip, we also saw them change direction, come up, like flying, meeting each other, going around, and suddenly shoot off with a speed where you can't follow it with your eye. So, yeah.
So let's take a look. Let's have a look at this incredible imagery that you've obtained. I mean, it's some of the best UFO video I've seen in a while. Here we go.
Hold up! Whoa!
Scream, my bad.
Hold up!
That really is quite something, Martin. Tell me what you were feeling as you saw that.
I was shocked. I think I was shocked. We also saw a light up there. This is not that light, but we saw a light up there that came up that was completely red. No. And it just disappeared. And I remember, I think it's very human to think, what is it that I'm seeing? And I remember when we got back home, the three of us, we went up, three guys up there, and we were like, what is this? And my dreams were like recurring about this every night while we were being up there, because it is, even though I'm into the subject and I'm interested in it, I know there's something to this subject, it was just a different thing to witness it. It was quite shocking in many ways, actually. It really turned my world upside down in many ways, I must admit that.
So you say that you were using an infrared camera with obviously a pretty good lens that night. Mm-hmm. Could you see this with your naked eye, with the human eye?
Oh yeah, definitely. With the human eye, it's like it sort of looks like at the same as it does on the infrared camera. It's very, very big, and sometimes there's more lights coming up doing different kind of maneuvers. It's sort of the best way I could describe it is when a plane is taxiing out from the gate and to the runway. It does like turns, go this and that direction, and then it enters the runway, and then it sort of shoots away. It seems like that.
Let's look at the debunking arguments. I mean, obviously, you're near an airport. Could it be an approaching aircraft? And could it be that we were mistaking a landing light from an approaching aircraft?
Yeah, I must say I'm also a very skeptical person, even though I'm interested in this subject. I think you need to be skeptical. But there's like being skeptic, but there's also being unreasonable skeptic. I've been there. There's nothing up there. The thing that's behind the ice here, or the mountain, that's the ice cap. There's nothing else but ice for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers.
So we're not talking about any human settlement up at the top of that mountain. What is there?
No. There's nothing but ice. Nothing but ice. But I'm not here to make any argument about what we are actually seeing, because we don't know what we are seeing. And I think the most intriguing thing about all of this is the fact that all of the surrounding circumstances about these lights are the most weird part, because when these lights come up, we see flashes of light, like flash bulbs around completely different areas of the sky. We see like these flash bulbs come up, and we could sort of predict, actually, when we saw some flash bulbs coming, we could see that just in a minute, and you can hear that on some of our footage, just in a minute, a new light will come up, and surely the light come up. So
it was almost
weird.
predictive. You'd see the flashes, and then you'd see the big orb coming up.
Yeah, and we also had several instances where we sort of, this might sound weird, but there's a clear consciousness element to this, because we sort of communicated with it as well. We could look at the sky and sometimes just like being jokingly saying, if there's something really here and this is anomalous, please give us a sign. And right where we are looking, we see this flash. Doof. We tried that so many times up there. So it seems very playful in some way.
Did you capture that on film?
You can hear us talking about it, but we didn't catch that on film because our cameraman, he was actually standing with his back to me and my friend, and we were looking up at the sky and said that, and then this big flash came around. And we have actually tried that quite a number of times, where our instruments, our camera equipment sort of malfunction in many weird ways, especially during our first trip up there. We had like a lot of material just on mysterious ways just disappeared, both from hard drives and the SD cards. It's like having your washing machine and your car breaking down at the same time. There's no correlation, but it happened. So, yeah.
So you knew you'd taken certain images of certain video, and then when you went back to find it, it had disappeared.
It has disappeared, yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Was there any possibility that somebody could have got access to your hard drives without you knowing?
No, I don't think so. I think that this project started out with us wanted to see this light for ourselves and figure out what's going on in Narsarsuaq. But it became into a whole other movie, because it also became a movie about how this phenomenon sort of transcends the way we are thinking in many ways, because there's this huge consciousness component to it, and my suspicion is, having done this for around 2 years now, is that I'm not so sure that the UFO phenomenon is here to be understood. I think it maybe is here to sort of transform our way of thinking. That's maybe very Jacques Vallée-ish in many ways, but he's talking about something that's called recursive unsolvability, where like things cannot be solved within the system itself. It's sort of complicated, but it's like an eye can't see an eye for itself, or a camera cannot take a picture of itself. And I think in many ways, my suspicion is that there's something to that in regards to the UFO phenomenon, for sure.
So without wanting to sound too pointy-headed, I mean, I love what you're saying here, because I agree with you. I'm increasingly coming to the view that the purpose of these displays is some kind of attempt at an epistemic ontological wake-up, that it's trying to twig our consciousness. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, completely. I've had so many weird experiences throughout doing this, and some of the experiences, I can tell you a funny story, actually. We were filming for a completely different film. I was moving out of my apartment, and I just needed to clean up some stuff on top of a closet I had. That was the only thing left in my apartment, and I just needed to see whether there was something up there. And then I found a Greenlandic flag and a book called Life in the Universe, and I took it down. I was like, that's weird. And we didn't know anything about the story in Greenland. We didn't know anything about what we were supposed to do later on or anything like that. So we have had so many things that we sort of
So you actually feel you're a bit shy about admitting it, but you feel you were given a bit of a prod by something to take an interest in Greenland.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, I'm part Greenlandic, so this came very close to my heart. And hearing all these discussions about Greenland and the US and Denmark at the moment, it kind of makes me feel sad. And that's also why I chose to appear on your show now, because I think there's many nuances to this story. And we can maybe go a bit into that, because what is the authorities doing about all of this in Greenland at the moment? That's the next question, right?
I'm very glad you did come on our show, Martin, and I think our viewers will be fascinated to hear and see what you've captured. Tell me a little bit about the indigenous peoples of Greenland. Is there like an indigenous native population of Greenland?
Yes, but it's very, very limited. And I think, to be also with respect to the Greenlandic people, I think they have also come a bit away from their native heritage, but there are native people who are up there who have thoughts about this. In mythology, they have a saying about flying kayaks traveling from the spirit world to our world, and that's sort of like things that maybe people like Diana Pasolka has talked about as well, that we have these myth or descriptive talks about what they are actually seeing. And we actually spoke to a native shaman up there who told us that we have been seeing these lights forever. We know they're here. We know the red lights, but we don't write them down. It's only the white man who writes them down. And I think that's very indicative for maybe all this UFO discussion as well. I think we need, especially in terms of native people, I think we need to be more respectful for their way of thinking and their way of dealing with these topics, because in Greenland they do really have, it's an integrated part of their reality, having a supernatural view. It's not supernatural for them. They have been living with nature forever. So UFOs or hunting, it's just a part of nature for them.
Do they, when you say that they've got a long history of seeing these objects, do the locals talk openly about seeing them? Is there a candor? Are people prepared to talk about it, or are they a little bit shy about discussing it?
Of course, they're a bit shy. The Greenlandic people are not the most talkative people. You need to build up a certain kind of trust, and that has also meant quite a bit of work for us, of course, because it is a different topic. It's a difficult topic, but I think that they're comfortable talking about this, because ghost stories and things that's going on in the mountains, it's not very new for them. It's an integrated part of their worldview in many ways, at least for some of them. I can't speak for all of them, but I feel it's different from the Western world, at least.
Let's talk about the objects. You described an oval object that was seen by the pilot. The imagery that I've seen from what you've sent me suggests a lot of the time it's white oval or spherical objects. What other shapes, if any, were there, and are they always at night?
Not always at night, no. They are also being seen during daylight. I actually witnessed one myself during a hiking trip when we were up there last time. I said to the other guys, I think I just saw some weird stuff in the sky, but it was just maybe like something, I don't know. I saw it just briefly. And then I talked with a woman later on, and she said, I saw this weird object hanging in the sky. And I was like, wait, well, we saw the same thing then. It wasn't just something in the sky. So they appear during daytime as well. And when you look at the objects through a binocular or something like that, people describe them as being cone-shaped, emitting different kind of lights from the bottom, green, red, orange. So they emit some kind of light if you look at them through binoculars. So, and people have also been telling us, and this is like highly credible witnesses, sort of flight mechanics, saying that they have seen structured craft up there circling around near the city, right? So, yeah.
Do you think the United States Pituffik Space Surveillance Base would know about what you're seeing and what the locals are seeing?
I'm not so sure, because I spoke with a Greenlandic pilot about this, the guy with the UFO encounter with the oval-shaped object, and he said, it's a very funny thing. He said, we want to know everything that goes around in the world. We want to understand everything in the world. But when it comes to UFOs, we don't want to learn anything about it. We just want to keep it under wraps. We don't want to talk about it. We want to see it. And I think that was quite telling for the way that the Danish authorities also at least handled this. And I think that this story actually has the potential to make the government or the authorities that right now are having huge discussion about security in Greenland, they should pick this up. They should take this seriously, not at least from a security policy perspective, but more in the perspective about taking the Greenlandic people serious, because they have made inquiries and they have reported this to the authorities, but they're getting sort of stonewalled. And I think that's...
So there's been an official concern in Greenland, in the governing people in Greenland. They've raised this with Denmark back in Copenhagen. What has been the response?
The Greenlandic people up there, the witnesses has reported it to the Arctic Command up there. That is sort of the defense unit up there who's in control of everything that goes around military up there. And they have referred the reports to the Greenlandic police, and I have gained public insight into how they've actually dealt with the cases, and they just shelved the cases. And actually they say that they haven't had any UFO sightings within the last 10 years. Our former defense minister has said that, and I had got a confirmation from the Danish Defense Command that their stance on this is still that they didn't have any UFO encounters, neither in Greenland or in Denmark.